Maybe we could go through I guess like a standard cow in each one of your operations and what the life cycle is like.
Yeah, so on the dairy farm, our cows are born here on our dairy, and we raise all of our calves here on the dairy. So when a calf is born, it's going to be raised in what we call like a hutch, and it's basically for the first 2 to 3 months of its life while it's establishing its immune system. We keep it in an individual hutch because calves are kind of I always joke that they're like preschoolers that get put in preschool and that they will all like lick each other, cough on each other, sneeze on each other. So trying to get them off to a really good start in those first couple of months. And they're obviously going to get milk multiple times throughout the day. Once they get of age, they're going to get grain and grass and all those like forages as well. They're going to move to a group pen after those first couple of months, where they will be in with several other calves their age, and then we'll continue to raise them up. We obviously are a dairy, so we keep all the female cows, and the male cows are actually bred to beef. So it's called beef on dairy. So they are bred to enter the beef supply system. So, kind of like a cattle ranch like Natalie's or similar to that would buy those cows from us and ultimately raise them. We don't really raise any of the beef cows ourselves. And then for the herd size or the milking side of things, when those cows come of age, which is about 2 years old, they're going to enter our milking herd. So they will begin lactating after they obviously give birth to a calf. And then they will continue to have a calf. It's about a year and a couple months is like the cycle of a dairy cow. And so we will, after she gives birth, we will milk her. And then whenever it is at about typically 9 months after that, we will what's called dry her off. So she will enter a dry cow period where she is not being milked and she's hanging out, growing her next calf. And then the cycle will start all over again at the end of a dairy cow's life. So we will own the cow from the moment she's born till the last moment. And so at the last moment, like at the end of their life, when they're no longer a dairy cow, they do enter the beef supply side of things as well.
Wow, so interesting. How long is that life cycle?
It really depends on the cow. But typically I would say usually it's like 5 lactations. So if you take that into account, it's, the cow is, 6 to 7 years old, essentially. My husband looked recently and he has one cow that is like 13 lactation. So that would mean they're like 15. So it really just depends on lots of different things. You mentioned that the longevity of a cow can obviously be a crucial role in being sustainable. So we want that cow to be a part of our herd for as long as possible. I mean, when a cow enters our milking herd, we have a 2-year investment in her already that we have been raising her up before she ever even enters our milking herd. So obviously we want that longevity to be there then continuing into the future.
That's fantastic. Natalie, what about you?
Yeah, so I'll speak for our operation or kind of give our operation as example, but as a caveat for everyone listening, no two ranches in the US are the same. A lot of it depends on like geography, rainfall, land, pasture, type of cattle. I mean, there's so many variables. And so what I'm doing here on our ranch in Nebraska, you could probably have, you already spoke of a guest or a farmer you had on from Colorado. She may do something completely entirely different, like wool calve. You could calve at different seasons and times of the year. So for our ranch, we calve in May. We are a May calving herd. And then, like I said, we'll have the mom and the baby stay together. So they're actually out on pasture for all the way until we're lucky enough here in Nebraska that we can graze corn stalks, which isn't something a lot of people are aware of, but that's a really good forage for cattle. And then it's obviously beneficial for the farmer because they have an animal out grazing on that land. And so it's a really great integrative system of plant and animal like things should be. So we go from summer pasture where we, rotationally graze our cattle out there. We'll put them onto corn stalks together. And then about December is when what's called weaning for a ranch. And that is when you separate the mama and the baby from each other. At that point, it's almost like a teenage age for the calf. I mean, they're definitely ready to be away from their mother. And I think the mother is ready for them to be, off of them milking. And so we wean around December. And then we'll keep that calf again for a few months, finish feeding it. And then that's what we will sell off. And then the cycle just kind of starts all over again.
That's fantastic. It was really interesting to learning about the mothers and the calves from each of you on listening to one of your recent episodes. It sounds like the moms in the dairy farm don't really stick with the calves very much. And it sounds like it's almost harder to detach them in your operation, Natalie.
Yeah. And that is one thing that, a dairy industry does get hit hard for that. And Tara can kind of talk about why those regulations are in place. And they do that because it really is actually for the safety of the calf and then like the health of the mother as well. But that's one thing, like sometimes when I was sharing about calving, I would get some people commenting about why isn't it the calf with the mother or all these things. And, so I do think there's this overlap in, just general awareness of how different things are within the agriculture industry. But yeah, beef cattle, the calves stay with their moms for quite a while.
Yeah, it's interesting. Online, it gets a lot of confusion between dairy and beef in that way. I've seen videos online of a beef cow, and if you take away a beef cow's calf, she will like bellow and be more aggressive, and that is bred into a beef cow. And then they'll be like, oh, this is a dairy farm, and you're like, that is not a dairy farm, that's actually a cattle ranch, and it's completely different. Yes, they're both cows, but they are such different animals. Dairy cows have just been bred for different things than cattle ranching, for cattle that are going to be out on pasture. My brother actually made the transition from dairy farming to cattle ranching a few years ago, and he laughs at like what he could put his his beef cows out on. If he put a dairy cow, like they wouldn't make it a week, that it's just, they're not very hardy animals. And so one of the things that with that breeding is they do not always make the best mothers. They will often have a calf, get up, leave the calf, and that's it. Like they just don't have a lot of interest. And so it's just a very different world. The other cows in the pen will often like rush to the calf, and so the calf can end up getting hurt. And so there's a lot that goes into it, and it's just they're very bred very differently. And then obviously we take a lot of pride in caring for our calves. There's a ton that goes into raising our calves. They're the future of our herd. And so making sure that they have, a really healthy start is crucial for us on the dairy.
Yeah. It's so interesting. We'll talk about ethics here in a little bit, but I think people have this idea that if you're going to raise cows, either for dairy or for beef production, you think that the people running the ranches don't care about animals. And you start to talk to these ranchers and you learn like, no, they like the kids play with them. They have names, like they really care for their animals, regardless of whether they're in, the most ideal, quote unquote, grass fed, whatever situation that we think is really idyllic. And again, there's so much nuance to that. But it seems to me across the board, everybody loves the animals and cares for them immensely.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
had Natalie's husband, Luke, on the podcast, and so she can jump in here, but he gave such a great quote that was just like, you get into this industry because you genuinely care for animals. Like caring for animals at farmer ranchers' core is like what they believe in.
Yeah, I was going to say agriculture and farming is actually a really stressful industry. We carry one of the highest suicide rates. And so you're not entering into ranching and farming for like a cush lifestyle or, some of the like a high return on your investment, some of these things you can enter into businesses for. You're really entering it because at your core, you love probably one, being outside, working with your hands, that kind of train of thought, but two, because you do love animals. Again, my husband is a perfect example. He has wanted to be a rancher and work with cattle since he was little. He's just one of those people that you ask them what they were when they're 4-year-old, and that is what they're doing today. And they are more than happy. Like that was what they were meant to do. And I think, like I've already said, you're in this industry as ranching and farming because you care about animals. And so that's obviously the emotional component of it, the person, the personal side of it. But there's also the business side of it. That is our jobs, our ranches, how we provide for our families and how you hopefully are going to provide for the next generation too. And our product is our animals, that in the beef supply chain, we have to have good calves for someone to buy it from us to continue down the beef supply chain. And if we don't have a good calf, we're not going to get, as good of money for it, or people won't want to buy it. And then we're out of a job. And so there's both the emotional side of it and the business side of it. And both of them come down to really high standards when it comes to animal welfare and really caring about your animals.
On the milk side, we get paid on our quality of our milk. Well, you're going to have higher quality milk based on the health of the cow, the diet of the cow, all of those things. So caring for her, again, like on the profitability side, which I feel like people don't always want to hear that side of it, but that's an important piece too. And if we don't have good milk quality, like the processors won't pick up our milk, and we would, again, like Natalie, be like out of a job